Hello, this is Nick Pope, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the UK's biggest paranormal network. And this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Paranormal Dimensions is fortnightly on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Many times in the history of our civilization, the introduction of a new thought has brought skepticism, even ridicule. Despite this, there always has remained the duty and inalienable right to tell the people the truth.
For me, this is the kind of show that I like doing most, where you basically just have a freewheeling discussion, have a chance to go off on topics. That's what's going to make you an outstanding player in the field. Just keep doing it.
Going to be definitely interesting, something you don't want to miss.
Hello and welcome to the show. Well, thank you for that introduction, Nick. And thank you for those kind comments, Peter Robbins. And thank you for that comment. I think that was one of our excited staff members. Okay, I've got a very exciting show for you today. If you've ever been interested in the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident from 1980, where Jim Penniston, John Burroughs, and a few others were involved in seeing a craft landing in the Rendlesham Woods, or Rendlesham Forest, this one's for you. The guest today is Gary Osborn. He wrote a book called The Rendlesham Enigma, Book 1 Timeline, with Jim Penniston. It's a very, very detailed book, if anyone's actually got it. It's getting on for 700 pages long, and it is really what I would call the definitive Rendlesham Forest UFO book. And I understand there's more to come. Okay, right. Before I actually go into the show, I'm just going to read a bit off the back of the book. The Rendlesham Forest incident of December 1980 is considered by far the most significant event in UFO history. It was also a unique military-related event, having taken place in Rendlesham Forest just outside of the twin bases of RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, England, both of which had been transferred to the United States Air Force in 1951 by the British MOD, which means Ministry of Defence, becoming one of the largest and most important NATO complexes in Europe during the Cold War. The account given in this book is that of James W. Penniston, a staff sergeant at the time of the incident, who was the primary witness who led the investigation in the beginning and had a top secret clearance, one of only 8 people with top secret clearance working security at the twin bases. His credibility and honesty were highly respected throughout his years in the US Air Force. Jim Penniston has teamed up with author Gary Osborn to present the definitive account of the Rendlesham incident and the aftermath of events, just as he witnessed and experienced them from the incident itself, which began during the early hours, or the early morning hours of Boxing Day, December the 26th, 1980. And these events go up to April 2014, and they're still ongoing, to be honest. Okay. Right, just before I bring Gary on, I'm just going to play a small segment of Jim Penniston. It's about 11 minutes, actually describing his first encounter with the when he first saw the UFO, and this is from the show he did with me. Well, getting on for a couple of years ago now, but it sort of shows his feelings about first seeing the UFO. Just have a listen to this before I introduce Gary.
And as we approached into the forest, there was a bright light that emulated. It just exploded, but without sound. Okay, so after hitting the ground, I got up, and of course there's a berm in front of me. and let's see, well, the law enforcement patrol, Burroughs, he was 25 feet back to the right of me, and I had Cabanzac, I would say, was probably 50 yards, maybe tops, where the entry control point is. Anyway, we're all in visual contact, okay?
Yeah.
And so as I approach over started going up toward the berm, I started getting physical effects. Before I got there, like static electricity on my skin, hair, clothes. Mm-hmm. There was no sound. For some reason, the air was like dead. And you couldn't hear like air or breeze through the trees, or like me walking on the forest floor, which is crunchy anyway by debris and stuff. And as I come up to the berm, I terminated. I called in CSC and I said, I'm terminating the security response option for downed aircraft. I'm initiating a helping hand situation. And that is a Air Force term for a possible hostile threat to a priority A, B, or C resource on the base.
Right.
Okay. So right at that point in time, it was no longer a recovery mode, anything. It was more of a security situation. And as I come over the berm, the light had dissipated, and what was appeared there was a triangular craft, which cannot be there because the forest is too small. The trees are too close together in a very small clearing. So I figured the best thing to do is do my job, get as much information as I can, and I was making security checks, and write down in my notebook as much as I could, and hopefully that would be enough. In the event I didn't make it, at least the command element would know what happened exactly out there, and then that would help them make decisions. And so I found my movements as I come toward the triangular craft labored. It felt, the best way to describe it is like you'd walk through a pool of water, waist high or something like that. I mean, I was struggling to get through it. One of the theories I have now that we worked over and over again is probably that the sphere of influence around this craft has this distorted time or reality. I don't know where. Maybe it's catching up, it's out of sync, something like that. And so as closer I got to the craft, no longer 8 feet away, I'm 4 feet away. I felt the restrictions of movement seemed to dissipate, and they had like gaudier colors running through the fabric of the skin of the craft, and they were slowing down throughout the craft, and finally they just stopped, and they just sort of faded away and dissipated. So all I had was a black craft. In my description, it was like black glass, because it was also, I will tell you about, touching it and the smoothness of it. But I did some immediate things. I didn't have no measuring devices out there, so I had to use what I had. I'm 6'2", and it was sitting above the ground somehow, and I guesstimated that somewhere between 6.5 to 7.5 feet high at the dorsal area of the craft. I paced off. And my stride's pretty good. I get like 3 feet for a stride. So I did 3 of them. It was 9 feet long, and that was equal on every side. At least it appeared that way. I had fascination. There was light coming out from underneath the craft yet, because I didn't even have to use a flashlight out there. And you know how dark that forest can be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I was like looking underneath, and I couldn't see no landing gear, and I said, I wonder how this is supporting itself. And so, you know, I pushed on it, and it was solid. I mean, it didn't even move 1 millimeter. It was that solid. And but somehow it was fixed over the ground with this light technology that I still don't understand, because obviously we find out later it left impressions in the ground. And so I was pretty in awe, and then I had a mixture of emotions from fear to high anxiety to rationalizing it as I was going. And I said, well, I'm still here, so it's got to be benign, you know? Yeah, so that was my thought. So I talked myself down from the panic. I did, and so I still continued to do the investigation. I was looking for obvious things with the craft itself. All aircraft have, every aircraft has this, and that is intake, exhaust ports, flaps, areas, things like that. It was void of all those things. Which means it cannot fly, but was sitting there.
Well, yeah, flying as the way we know it, yeah.
As the way that's, I mean, you know, we were trained, at least security was trained monthly on aircraft identification, the silhouettes only, stuff like that. I mean, this was not a known aircraft in the Jane's Book of Aircraft. I mean, but it had sort of human characteristics of it, you know. Yeah, I mean, it was triangular at the time. It had a dorsal area, which at the rear of it did not have crew compartments. I looked for those. It did not have any riveting. That it was completely smooth. Then.
Did you feel that it might have had some sort of living beings on it, or would you not, or you just didn't know, or?
Well, I didn't know. I was just doing whatever facts it was. The thing is it was too small to be manned by you know, a pilot.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just too small for that. You know, so. But somehow it was intelligent because it had intelligent control because it was there. How did it get there? I'm out in the middle of, you know, a forest in Suffolk. How did this happen?
And it seemed to know that you were there as well, didn't it? The people looking at it.
Well, I don't know exactly. I know that it got docile because of the less activity, and it seemed. They didn't take no type of action for my walking around it. I was still hopeful. When I seen I was going to do a 360 walk around, and I was like, I don't know, halfway around, and I seen there was writing on it. I went, oh, thank God, there's writing on this thing. Oh, yeah, I was like relieved, and I said, yeah, you know, it might be, you know. NASA, Russian, you know, it could be anything. I was just hoping for anything. And then when I got close to it, it wasn't writing. It was like glyphs, pictorial glyphs. And I said, oh no. And so, you know, I touched the craft, and it was smooth, and it was warm to touch. Later found out it's probably because it was emulating gamma radiation. The air temperature at that time of night was like, I don't know, 32, 33 degrees. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius. You can convert it yourself. Yeah. It was just above freezing.
Yeah, it's normally pretty cold up there at night, I know. in December. Yeah,
you can see your breath.
Yeah.
and so I was pretty fascinated by it. So I recorded the glyphs, and I continued to walk around examining it. And I went around for my second 360 because just to look at it more. And when I got back around, of course, I ran my hand across the craft. It was, like I said, smooth to touch, like black glass is the description I use. And as I came to the first glyph, when I touched that, it was like equivalent to like sandpaper, okay? Coarse sandpaper, like it was etched in there. And so I'm fascinated. There's no doubt about that. I'm in awe because I am pretty sure that we don't have anywhere in our inventory anything like this.
No. Okay, that was Jim Penniston describing his first encounter with the UFO. So now we'll go straight into the show and introduce Gary Osborn.
Hello, Gary. Welcome to the show.
Hello there, David. Nice to be on here.
Oh, I'm absolutely flabbergasted to get you on, Gary, because I know you don't do many of these shows. And
no.
And I'm absolutely pleased to get you on. And I know you're very eager to put over your, I don't know whether you call it a story, but put over your side of things, because I know there's been quite a lot of reaction to the Rendlesham Enigma book, Book 1 Timeline, which you wrote with Jim Penniston. And I know that there's going to be a lot of things about facts and figures in here. So
yeah,
I'll tell you what. Before we kick off, and all the listeners out there, if you'd like to get a pencil and a pen or a bit of paper, because you're going to have some figures put over to you, and you might want to write them down, and then you can actually do some research yourself into whatever Gary's going to say. And but I think you're going to find the whole thing fascinating. It sort of blew me away. It actually blew Jim Penniston away as well when he heard all about what Gary came up with. So anyway, Gary, right. So how did you get into all this with Jim Penniston? How did it happen?
Yeah, he contacted me back in 2010. I think it was October 2010, and he was in a relationship with a mutual friend, and she got in touch with me in 2009 on Facebook. And he said to her that he'd been having dreams about 23.5 degrees, which is a strange thing in itself, really. I mean, who dreams about, an angle? Anyway, she told him, why don't you get in touch with Gary Osborn, because his research is all about this 23.5 degree angle that he's found in different sources throughout history, in numerous sources throughout history.
Yeah, if I could just jump in there, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. You have actually written a couple of books about the pyramids and things like that, haven't you? You know, and this is this is your research. This is why he contacted you.
Yeah, my research was all about that. What I just said. I mean, I was finding these references to the angle, to the Earth's obliquity tilt angle, because it's tilted in respect of the ecliptic plane of the Sun by 23.5 degrees. I mean, that is a rough figure that they use now. It's an all-round figure, but the actual figure is 23.43 degrees. But there's lots of these. This is something that I just found out a few days ago. The Giza complex, with the pyramids and the Sphinx, the center of the Giza complex, right? It actually represents the galactic center. And everything that leads to that in a logical way. And of course, the galactic center might have been responsible for the cataclysms in the past. The kind of matter that was kind of exploded from it, and when it reached our solar system, it caused all kinds of havoc, with the planets, and that's what's at the center of the Giza complex, is this point in the center, which seems to represent the galactic center because of the timeline. Because the ages of Taurus and Scorpio are on that same point where the galactic center is, and that's where it is on the Giza plateau. Ooh. So that's a big thing, because then you realise that the Wheel of Fortune in the tarot card, the tarot card, the Wheel of Fortune, that actually encodes the layout of Giza, the actual plan of Giza with the the Giza diagonal timeline.
Huh.
It's actually encoded in the Wheel of Time card, the tarot card.
Wow.
And then you realise that the Wheel of Time is actually the Milky Way galaxy and the way it rotates around its centre. Its black hole centre, because it's supposed to be a supermassive black hole at the centre. But it's also a supermassive white hole. It's a black hole white hole. It's like an alternating black hole white hole. It will spew information out. It will spew, material out, and it will suck material in. So it's an alternating kind of process,
Well,
but it takes thousands of years for it to turn from one to the other. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, what I'll do, I'll try and splice that in at the end of there, because I think that'll be interesting. I should be able to slot that in.
Yeah, but then you realise, and I mean, I realised this after I had my experience in '93, that all subatomic particles, which we think are particles, all subatomic elementary particles, they are the same thing. There's many black hole white holes at the centres of them, and so they're balanced because the frequency of their alternation from black hole to white hole is so rapid. They don't pull matter in and they don't push all matter out. They're balanced. That's what keeps everything balanced in reality. You see, it's like each atom is a swirling vortex of energy information that's been pushed out of the center, gets sucked back in again and then pushed out again. And this process is so rapid that, it's not noticeable. Do you see what I'm saying?
Fantastic.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does. Yeah.
So you get the bigger things at the centers of galaxies. You get them at the centers of planets. You get them at the center of subatomic particles in everything that's in reality. The centers are many black holes, white holes. Yeah. So I thought I'd tell you that. And actually, I asked Jack Safadi, the physicist, about that, and he says, "Yeah, you're right. That's what we've been working on."
Wow.
So.
Very interesting.
References to that angle in all these different sources throughout history, and especially 17th century paintings. I first found it in the painting by Poussin, and I began finding it everywhere. Spears and swords and linear objects, like edges of tables, edges of steps, walls. At this exact angle at 23.5 degrees. Also 23 degrees. So I thought, well, there must be something about the Earth's axis that they're trying to communicate. Anyway, Jim got in touch with me about this, and he actually put on the title of the email 23.5, and I asked him about it, and he said he's been having dreams about this 23.5 degree stuff. Now, what he said to me was it must be what he thinks it was like certain temperatures on the planet. He thought it was the temperature. 23.5 degrees temperature, and I said no, it's the Earth's axis obliquity angle. It's tilted at 23.5. And he said, "Oh yeah, I should have known that, because we all taught that in school, but sometimes we forget the figure." And so it went from there really. And he said to me, I think it was in January. Yeah, it was in January 2011. He said, "I've got these coordinates, these geographic coordinates that I want to send you, and I want you to just have a look at them and see what you think. See if you find any additional information from them." He said, one's gone out already into the public domain. It was shown on Ancient Aliens episode, and that's to do with High Brazil, or High Brazil. It's how I think the Irish pronounce it High Brazil, not High Brazil. And
I always thought it was Brazil, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But the coordinates, he said, those coordinates, he said, have gone out on TV, on the program. So he said, I've got another 6 sets of coordinates that are being deciphered right now. And the decipherer I later found out was Joe Luciano, who was a binary code expert, who was also in the USAF, same as Jim. And in February, on February the 2nd, which happened to be my son's birthday, he sent them over to me by email, which came in the early hours of the 3rd of February, and I was still up. I hadn't gone to bed, and I was still up, and I've got them through, and then I thought, I was so kind of intrigued by it that I wanted to get into it straight away. So now I used Google Earth, which anybody would do, and I saw the cursor kind of dramatically make its way to all these ancient sites. Like Caracol, which is a Maya pyramid in Belize, the Yucatan Peninsula. China, which was Mount Taishan. Greece, which is the Temple of Apollo there. It looks like a large kind of framed window, which is, that's all that's left of the temple there. And it looks like a doorway. So that's on island of Naxos. Then you had Giza, which was strange because it was a point that, what it was, the Giza coordinates from the code kind of targeted this point between G1 and G2. When I say G1, I mean the Great Pyramid, and G2 is the second largest pyramid. But it was at a point between them. It wasn't actually on the pyramid. You'd think that, at Giza, if you was going to target anything, it would probably be the Great Pyramid or the Sphinx, But it was actually in this kind of descriptive location between the two pyramids. And I wondered about that. But anyway, so there was Naxos, Caracol, Taishan, then there was Sedona in North America, which is in Arizona. High Brazil, which we've already mentioned, and the Nazca coordinates where the lines are, the Nazca lines. And that's one of the most important ones because a lot of information came out with the connection between Nazca and Giza. Well, anyway, after looking at these on Google Earth, that same week, I thought I wanted to see them all together on a map projection of the Earth, which you would find in Google Maps. Yeah, you'd get all of them. You could see all of them on a map projection of the Earth in Google Maps. Now, at that time, Google Maps was different. You could have a close up. You could zoom in on the landscape. As I said, on a 2D map projection of the Earth. Well, you can't do that now.
Oh, can't you? Why did they stop that then?
I don't know. They just changed the program, and I think it was around about 2014 when they first did that. So I only had a kind of window, a window frame.
I didn't actually realise it stopped all that. Oh,
yeah, because I started looking at this in 2011. I only had a window frame of about, 3-4 years to actually find this information that I'm going to talk about. So anyway, after looking at everything on this 2D map projection of the Earth, I wondered why he was telling me about 23.5 degrees, why he said he was having dreams about that. And of course, a lot of my research before I began work on the coordinates was about finding these references to the angle 23.5 in a lot of arts, a lot of different sources throughout history. And so I started looking at the angles between the coordinates on this 2D map projection of the Earth. And I found a 23.5 degrees between Nazca and Giza. I mean, you wouldn't get this on the spherical globe. You'd have to use azimuth angles. But on this 2D map projection of the Earth, you get a straight 23.5 degrees. And I thought, that's strange. And then I thought about Jim, and I thought, is he pulling my leg here? Is he yanking my chain, as they say in America?
Trying you out sort of thing,
Yeah, did he devise this because he already knew that I'd been working on this angle? And then I found another angle from Nazca to Caracol, which is another 23.5 degrees, but it's perpendicular to the first one, like a 90 degrees away from the first one. And then I found all these other angles, but what they were all just free angles. They were 23.5 degrees, 11.75, which is half the 23.5, and 51. The 51 angle was between Nazca and High Brazil. And anyone would identify that with the side angle of the Great Pyramid, even though it's 51.84 degrees. I mean, 51 would identify it, they'd recognize it. So, and then I realized that all these angles between the coordinates drew up a 2D cross-section picture of the Great Pyramid, and these same angles are pointing inside the pyramid from these coordinates to show the two internal chambers that we know of, but a third chamber above the King's Chamber that we don't know about. I mean, it's not publicly known. It may be known by a few people. They may know about that chamber. It may have been breached, but we don't know about it. You know, the general public don't know about that chamber, and it's pointing to this other chamber, this third chamber. And also, the coordinates are pointing to the Azores in the Atlantic, near the 7 islands of the Azores. Well, there's 9 of them actually, but there's 7 that are kind of grouped together. And I thought that's strange because the Naxos coordinates that came up in the code, which is the island of Naxos in Greece, if you was to mirror those coordinates and put west on the longitude coordinates instead of east, it would take you across the Greenwich meridian to the west, and it would target a point that's just in between Santa Maria Island and San Miguel Island, which is in the Azores. So it's pointing to the Azores again. In fact, I found lots of these references from the code that are pointing to the Azores. There must be several references to the Azores. The biggest one being the Sphinx, but I'll get onto that later. So I thought, wow, this is something really kind of strange because it's drawing up an image of the Great Pyramid and it's what it is. It's centralized on the Greenwich meridian and the equator. And the equator, where the intersection point of the Greenwich meridian and equator is where the Queen's Chamber would be inside the Great Pyramid, if you look at it in cross section. And I thought, no, this is beyond coincidence, way beyond coincidence. I mean, it's drawing up the Great Pyramid with using just 3 angles. And I realized that this was far beyond what Jim Penniston would have understood, I'm sure. You know, with the other things that I started finding as well, there was no way Jim Penniston could have done this. He could not have devised it. And knowing Jim now, and I've known him for more than 11 years now, you know, he just wouldn't have the patience to do something like this.
No.
Just wouldn't have the patience.
Yeah.
He's not lived and breathed this stuff like I have, you know.
No, I know when I spoke to him about it, he said, figures, he said, I'll to hell with it. I can't, you know, I just can't be bothered with it all. He said, you need to speak to Gary about all that.
Yeah.
You know.
So anyway, so this angle turns up in the code, okay? And there must be a reason for it. Now I have to go back to the research I was doing before I got involved with the code, and that was from about 2001 when I first started finding these references to the Earth's axis obliquity angle. And as I said, I first found it in a painting by Nicholas Poussin, you know, 17th century. And it was actually his self-portrait. I think it was 1650. And there's an explicit 23.5 degree angle in there. What it is shown with his ring, which is a pyramid stone ring, 4-sided pyramid stone ring. And if you plot the angle from that ring to a painting that's stood behind him, which is of a goddess with a tiara, with an all-seeing eye in the center. If you plot the angle from that ring to the all-seeing eye, it's 23.5 exactly.
Wow.
And that's the connection between the pyramid and the all-seeing eye, what you find on the $1 bill. You know, with the capstone, you know, with the eye in the capstone. And actually, when you look at the $1 bill, you look at that image on the $1 bill, you'll find that the right side of the pyramid is actually 23.5. So there's these connections, okay? So that was one of the first I found. And then I started finding in other paintings, as I said, you know, all these linear objects that are painted in these images, and it also the theme is important. The theme of what the painting is about is important. And at these angles, so I thought, well, this is a phenomenon, you know, it's kind of passed under the radar with a lot of people. No one really knew about this, or no one has known about it, because I did look up on the internet to see if anybody was putting forward the same findings, you know, theorizing about it, and no one was. In fact, I found that yes, they had been noticed by somebody, and this was a guy named Frank C. Higgins, writing in 1919 in a book called Ancient Freemasonry, because he was a 32nd degree Mason. He shows examples of these references to the angle of the Earth's obliquity in a lot of ancient sources. Okay, and maybe I'm getting beyond myself here, because what I wanted to say was, while I was looking at these references, while I was researching into them and trying to find out why they painted that angle or encoded it in the paintings, I was in touch with Scott Crichton, because we would usually frequent the Graham Hancock forum on his website, you know, and engage in discussions on there. And he was absolutely kind of fascinated by these references to the Earth's axis. And it was later on that he said, let's do a book together. You know, I've got some information that might actually go along with what you're saying about these references. Now, his theory on it is that the church, he says the reason why they encoded these angles in the paintings is because the church, you know, enforced the doctrine, the geocentric doctrine. It was introduced by Claudius Ptolemy in the 2nd century AD. That the earth, being God's creation, was perfect, that it was fixed and did not move and was perfectly upright, with the sun, planets and stars revolving around it. You know, it wasn't tilted. And he said that maybe the scientists of the day, and because they would be seen as heretics if they ever talked about the heliocentric, you know, picture of the sun being at the center of the solar system and the earth going around the sun. If they ever mentioned that, they would be seen as heretics. And there must have been a group of people like that who knew about the Earth's condition of it being tilted at 23.5 degrees, and it was kind of a tradition with them that they encoded this angle in the paintings as a kind of way of putting two fingers up at the church, you know what I mean? So, and saying that this is the scientific data that we have about the condition of the Earth. You know, we know that it's tilted, and it's not like what the church is saying. So anyway, I thought that was a good idea. I thought, well, actually, it's a good theory, and it kind of fits. It's logical, what Scott Crichton was saying. And that might explain the reason why these 23.5 angles are referenced in these paintings. You know, it was a way of encoding information, and they didn't want to be seen as heretics, so they had to kind of do it in secret. You know, kind of communicate it to people, other initiates, into this knowledge, you know, through, you know, just encoding it. So I thought it was a good idea, you know, good theory that Scott came up with. But then I thought about Frank C. Higgins, which I later found, you know, his book, Ancient Freemasonry, and I thought he found references to the Earth's axis angle going way back before the church. He found these amulets, which were keystones, which became the keystone in Freemasonry. And he said that the sides were angled at 11.75, which is half of 23.5. So the two sides at 11.75 would make an angle of 23.5. He also found keystones which were 47 degrees, which is 2 times 23.5, and lots of references to the 23.5 angle. And these were and these amulets, he said, were like over 7,000 years old. So this is way, way back beyond, you know, before the church. And I said, there must be another explanation for this, you know. And then I started finding this angle in religious paintings. And I found it with Jesus Christ, these images of Jesus Christ carrying the cross, the crucifixion cross, on his way to Golgotha to be crucified. And these crosses which he's carrying, or on his shoulder, or in all ways, how he's kind of carrying this cross to this place, they're all at the angle of 23.5 degrees. So I reasoned why would that be? You know, maybe, yeah, you know, what Scott Crichton was saying, that could be, you know, you could apply it to that. But then I looked back, because I knew about, you know, the ancient Egyptian myth of Osiris, the god Osiris, the god, you know, the god of the dead, the god of the underworld, and he was also a fertility god and also a vegetation god. And what they would do there was a ceremony called the raising of the Jed column, and this was during the time of the spring equinox, which is the only time in the year when the Earth is at the same conditions as if it was upright, and not tilted. So there's only 2 days in the year when the Earth kind of meets the same conditions as, of equal day and night and temperate weather. And this is on the equinoxes. And his Jed column, what it is his backbone. It's, which the scholars have said, the Jed column represents his backbone and spinal column. And his backbone, Osiris, is kind of raised upright, on these dates of the equinox, of the spring equinox. And I thought, well, that's what this is about Jesus Christ, carrying a cross at 23.5 degrees. He is modelled on Osiris, or his son Horus, Osiris' son Horus, who is a reincarnation of Osiris. And it's actually Horus who resurrects Osiris. And he takes on the sins of the world, and he's nailed to the cross, and with the cross he's raised upright. And that's where he enters the heavenly kingdom. So I thought, well, what this is all about, it's a huge missing piece of the whole Messiah mythos. That what it is the Saviour, is the Messiah, the Saviour. But what his role is bringing the Earth's axis back to a vertical position. Okay? And when I say back to a vertical position, it then came to me, after doing a lot more research, it came to me that there was this belief that the Earth should be upright and not tilted. That the tilted Earth is a reflection of an imbalance in human consciousness, and that there was this belief that all sin kind of came from that. It was related to the Earth being tilted, imbalanced. And you realise that when you find these references to the angle 23.5, they're in paintings that have themes about war, conflict, battles, murder. There's like knives at the angle of 23.5 degrees. And you find all kinds of conflict that you find these angles in. Not just the angle, not just the paintings of Jesus Christ, but a lot of other religious paintings. Isaac, for instance, who's told by God to murder his son, or to sacrifice his son, and then he stops at the last minute. But you find these paintings of his dagger, where he's about to, knife his son, cut his throat. It's at the angle of 23.5 degrees. So anything to do with conflict, violence, war, anything of that nature, there you find these 23.5 degree angles. And what this is, it's telling us that the Earth's tilt, which a lot of people would say, well, we need the seasons. The Earth being tilted at 23.5 is a reflection of this imbalance in human consciousness, which is why we have all this, why we have conflicts, why we have duality, and why we are, backing one thing against another and that kind of thing. And there's this duality in it.
As you say, I mean, all those, they couldn't have been sort of just accidental or incidental, could they? Something must have been going on there to actually, a purposeful measurement. Like you say, it's bloody fascinating.
Yeah, I know. What I'm saying is that I don't have to believe in this myself to know that these exist, that these references to the angle exist. I don't have to believe what they believe, which is that the angle should, the Earth should be upright and not tilted. But then I started looking into what would the conditions of the Earth be like if the Earth was actually upright. And I found that it'd be like a Garden of Eden paradise. I mean, a lot of geophysicists and scientists have said that no, we need the seasons. Everything's balanced with the seasons. But there's a lot of people and a lot of scholars as well saying that if the Earth was upright at certain latitudes, it'd be like a continual springtime. It would be temperate weather all year round, and everything would be growing. Fertility would be at all-time high, and there would be no winter season where everything halts and dies off. The vegetation dies off. It'd be considered springtime. It'd be like the Garden of Eden. And then you hear about the fall of man, and then you find that, that might be associated with the Earth having been tilted from an upright position or almost upright position. And then you find a lot of references to the Earth actually having been upright at one time. There's books like Cataclysm by Allen and Dallaire, two geoscientists who found evidence that the Earth was upright at one time and it was tilted suddenly due to what they say was a comet. I don't know really. I mean, it's like you can't really quite put your finger on it. There's a lot of these sources saying that the Earth was probably upright at one time, and they've got evidence for it, but I can't find anything that's definitive, that say exactly shows proof of that. So what I'm saying is that there is this belief that the Earth should be upright, that being tilted is an unnatural condition. Even the ancient Greeks said that, and that it may have been upright at one time and suddenly tilted, and that was the fall of man and the fall away from the Garden of Eden. And
I mean, does this point to the fact that all the prehistoric animals got wiped out? Because they suddenly got wiped out by the as far as we know.
Yeah, mammoths found with food still in their stomachs. They've just digested. They've just eaten, and they found that they were frozen, and it could only really be a pole shift or like.
That's a really good example of that, because it would seem to indicate that the prehistoric animals were living in like jungle, like jungle environments, wouldn't they? It would seem.
Yeah, but as I said, I've been researching into this now since 2001. That's over 20 years ago now, and and in that time, there's just all this data that shows what I'm saying is right, but I can't quite prove that the Earth was upright at one time. As I said, there's a lot of books out there that saying they've got evidence of it. And there was a book titled Arctos by Jocelyn Godwin, which I thought was really kind of persuasive. And I actually talked to Jocelyn Godwin. I got in touch with him, and we corresponded. And he said, look, just keep it alive. Just keep the debate alive. He says, I don't know myself if the Earth was ever upright, but what you're telling me about these 23.5 degree references, he says, it shows that there was some kind of belief in it. But as I said, all this has passed under the radar, and no one has picked up on this. And I'm perhaps the first one to pick up on this since Frank C. Higgins did in 1919.
Yeah.
So anyway, this whole scenario of what all this might mean, the scenario is that maybe there was a cataclysm in the past that upended the Earth. It may have something to do with the Atlantis story by Plato. And I found also that there's Paul Laviolette, who's a PhD, who says that the galactic center was the cause of the cataclysm in the past, that energy and matter being spewed from the galactic center when it reached the solar system and our Earth caused the sun to, there was these kind of solar plasma outbursts which caused all kinds of destruction with the Earth, and that may have been one of the causes. So there are theories out there that kind of you think, that could apply to what I've been finding with these references, but you can't quite pin it down. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest question is why did Jim start coming up with these figures, which actually threw you together? And why would he be coming up with those figures? Is it something to do with the binary codes that he was having downloads for?
Yeah, because as I said, I found the 23.5 angle in between the coordinates in the code. As I said, on a map projection of the Earth, it's all there. That was the initial information I found. And I found all that within the first year of actually looking at the code, studying it.
Yeah. No, I think the point I'm trying to make is Jim would have absolutely no way of knowing that at all. With the binary that he was writing down.
I don't think so.
I mean, there are questions about, did Jim actually write that down at the right time? In 1980.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the evidence that I've seen, it does point to the fact that he did. And to be honest, and I can't believe that he would know about writing down binary figures and knowing exactly what it's all going to can end up as, in today's world, sort of thing. It's
well, the crux of the whole thing is, which is what we're leading up to, which is what I want to talk about, and we have discussed this, David, because we've had offline discussions. Is that what people who are skeptical about the code should face is, and this is a fact, is that the code authenticates itself, okay? And it authenticates itself by predicting a 12-digit number, a number that has 9 decimal places to it, which was, it was a constant. It's called the fine structure constant. And it was predicted that the new determination, which we have now, which was determined in 2018, it predicted it 38 years in the future. And actually 39 when you think about when it was actually published, because it was published in 2019. It was determined at the end of 2018, almost to the day when the Rendlesham incident happened. So that's like 38 years later, but then published the year after. But that's something I'm working towards, in this discussion. And really, that's something they've got to face, that there's no way anybody could have known about it. There's no way Jim Penniston could have known. No one in our timeline could have known about this 12-digit number that's predicted by the code back in 1980.
And I guess that even includes you.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, I mean, I know I found it, but it was the code that led me to it. Okay, so it's predicted this 12-digit number. I mean, that's twice as many numbers as you get with a lottery, Yeah. So, I mean, the odds against it is off the scale. And this is something that the skeptics will have to deal with, because the facts are there. I've laid out all the facts. Some of it was placed in the last chapter of the book, the Rendlesham Enigma with Jim Penniston. But look, I'll get onto that in a moment. What I want to say as a kind of conclusive kind of statement to this 23.5 degree stuff I was finding is that, yes, it turns up in the code. Now, why? Why does it turn up in the code? Is it because we're being told that this cataclysm that happened in the past is a recurring pattern? Because what the code does do as well, it points to, at Giza, it points to a line. The line on which the pyramids, the 3 large pyramids are aligned to, the southeast corners are aligned to it. G1, the Great Pyramid, and G3 in the south, the smallest pyramid, both their southeast corners are touching that line. Now, G2, the one in the center, that's kind of offset from the line a little bit. But they're touching this line, and this is how the line becomes visible. It's an abstract line. I mean, it's not a line that's been built with anything, but it's you see the line. It becomes visible when you look at the lines of. When you look at the pyramids and the way they're aligned to this line, and also when you look at this line during the winter solstice, the shadows that the pyramids form show this line. It comes to life. You see this line explicitly. Now, that line that the coordinates have been pointing to, which are Giza coordinates that were found in the code message, are pointing to, is a timeline, is a precessional cycle timeline. So what it does, it encodes a precessional timeline, a kind of what do you call it? A clock, like a pendulum clock, because you measure it one way and then you measure it back in the opposite direction. Now, this line is 2 160 royal cubits in length, and it's between these 2 subsidiary pyramids. This line stretches between these 2 subsidiary pyramids, and it's exactly it would have been 2,001 60 Royal cubits in length. Now, that means that that line is 1/6 the scale of what it should be. Now, the reason why it's 1/6 the scale is because, you know, it's practical. It'd be miles in length if you made it 6 times the size. But it's, as I said, it's scaled down 1/6, and the reason why is because it's really 12/9. You're supposed to be measuring in 12/960 years. So it's 12/960 years one way and 12/960 years the other, which totals 25/920, which is the precessional cycle in years, according to the ancient estimate. All right. So really, what this is, as I said, this line is a precessional pendulum clock timeline, and you can actually find specific dates on that timeline by measuring the royal cubits, measuring the lengths in meters, then turning them into royal cubits, and then multiplying that royal cubit measurement by 6, and then you get the year, the date on that timeline. You know, and you can do that anywhere along the timeline. You can find these specific dates. What comes up is that there is one specific date, and that's 8100 in the future, 8100 AD in the future, which is part of the actual Rendlesham message. It's in the first line of the Rendlesham code message, 8100, and that's in the future. But in the past, at that same point on the timeline, if you measure the other way, it would be 3100 BC, which is when the first dynastic period of Egypt began. So, as I said, you can find these specific dates, and I'm thinking that perhaps that point on the timeline is a cataclysm period. You know, so it's pointing to a cataclysm period within the precessional cycle on that Giza diagonal timeline. And that's what the coordinates have pointed to. They pointed to this timeline, which was encoded by whoever constructed Giza. And this is really what the Giza complex is all about. It's all been built around this Giza precessional timeline. And the coordinates from the code have pointed this out. It's something that me and Scott Crichton were already coming to. You know, we were coming to this conclusion that there was this precessional timeline at Giza, but the coordinates from the code specifies it, you know, more clearly. So that's one of the reasons why I think that maybe these references to the angle of 23.5 have something to do with a past cataclysm that could happen again in the future. And that's why, and I really don't want to be a catastrophist, you know, being a prophet of doom or something with this, but it seems that that's what, but it seems that the code wants us to acknowledge this, you know, that this does happen, and it's a kind of, it happens, it's a recurring pattern. It comes around again. And now it may be like so far off into the future that why tell us now? I still don't know why we're being told now, but maybe because we need enough time to prepare for it. I don't know. But, you know, Jim said that this code may have been passed back to us from the future. It may be sent back into, you know, I don't know, in 1980. And the reason being is that we decipher this code. What we find out about it prepares for the future, because maybe that may have already happened in the future. You see?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it does. Actually, in fact, I'm going to let you. I'm going to let you say what you're going to say a bit later, because I know what you've said to me, but I don't want to spoil it. And because I mean, Jim's never really thought this was aliens, has he?
No. He. What I mean, he's got an open mind, like I have. He's got an open mind about it. He wouldn't rule it out entirely, but his feeling has always been, and it comes from his hypnosis sessions as well, that whatever this intelligence is, it's from the future, or it's an intelligence that is able to manipulate time. It's from a I don't know, a domain that's outside our timeline.
Yeah, an interdimensional thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it could be that. Yeah. And
well, it could be affecting them. I mean, whatever happens in this dimension probably could affect them. Maybe that's what it. You know, that's the way I think of some things.
like me, has never been keen on the extraterrestrial hypothesis. That there's all these alien civilizations that are visiting our Earth, and because of the multitude of sightings and the regularity of the sightings, you'd think they'd be coming here all the time.
Yeah.
They'd be traveling like light years to get here. Or if they're able to bend space and time, they're able to do it. But then again, what is the reason? Why are they coming here? So I don't know. I think that what this intelligence is kind of separated by dimensions. They're in the same space, but separated by frequencies, or I think that may be what time is all about. It's got something to do with that.
Yeah, I think really the big thing about aliens, there was a big spanner in the works with the book Left at Eastgate, wasn't there? Which is sent us all right down the alien path, with things landed in Cape Green, all that sort of. What we know now is rubbish.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I suspend belief on almost everything I learn. I won't. You see, look, put it this way, and I've always used this analogy. You're in a circular room. You're at the centre of this circular room. And there's all these doorways leading off from this circular room. And down, if you open these doors, they all lead into tunnels, which are tunnels of like belief. They're belief tunnels. And you can open a door, you can look down, and you can know what the belief is about. But don't ever walk down those tunnels because you'll get lost. So you stay centered. You stay centered in this central room where all these beliefs are kind of leading off from. You're at the center. And it's just to remain centered and kind of neutral to it. Neutral to all these things that people try to get you to believe. They all want you to believe what they believe. And it's nonsense.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Yeah, it's a good analogy, I must say. I mean, I kind of steer off of that because I've actually seen a UFO of my own back in the mid-60s. So, and I couldn't explain what it was. It was a big orange thing. So whatever that was, I don't know. I mean, maybe that was people from the future. I don't know. But as I say, you can't actually just say it was aliens, can you? I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen one. I remember we were at a barbecue and looked up in the sky and there was this stationary kind of silver object. And it wasn't a satellite or anything. It was just stationary. It was there for a good 20 minutes and then it just faded away. And no one could explain it. I mean, I couldn't. So, and it wasn't a blip, it wasn't a balloon or anything. It was just stationary and it was just above us. But look, I won't. It's like what I'm telling you now about these references to the angle, that they are there. They're in the paintings. And there is this belief, I'm sure, that, the Earth should be upright. But I'm not going to, make the decision to believe. I'm not going to believe it. I need more data. I need to still research it to find something that actually really convinces me what they're trying to say. I mean, we can have all these speculations about it. And there's nothing wrong with speculating. But I'm always interested in the facts. That's what my research is about, is determining the facts.
Yeah. Well, I can say that there was a big Freemason and Masonic influence way back in the past, wasn't there? All these secret societies and things like that, which it seems like a lot of these people were connected to. Even some of the later ones. We've heard about Aldous Huxley and H.G. Wells, and they were all supposed to be in the Freemasons.
Over the time that I've been interested in all these subjects, I've read all that stuff. Like Aldous Huxley, the Teachings of All Ages by, I can't remember his name now, but the Freemason. I've gone through a lot of, literature. I was hungry for all that stuff because I had an experience back in '93, which just, it was like a rebirth for me, and it just changed me. And I was hungry to read anything I could get my hands on. So I've gone through all that. But, I've got no beliefs as such, Yeah,
I mean, so as far as religion goes, I'm not religious at all, but I do. I am a spirit. I do believe in spirit. So I don't know if you believe in all that sort of thing, but
I know. I am spiritual. I am spiritually inclined because, as I said, I had this experience in '93. But I'm not going to get tricked into believing something that's not factual. You know, it's just that you're just making up in your mind. You know, and when people talk about faith, you know, faith in what, for Christ's sake? It's like,
for Christ's sake, yeah.
I was brought up to say those sort of things. I used to hear it from everyone around me, but what I'm saying is faith. Is faith in what? You know, there's no. It could either be true or false. You know, if you put your faith in something, you're not really putting your faith in the facts. You know, you've got to find out the facts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where are we now? We want to get onto the what I was talking about earlier about the fine structure constant.
Yeah. I don't know if I threw you off the path there.
And the reason why I want to talk about that is because, as I said, that's the way the code authenticates itself.
Yeah.
You know, and there might not be anything, you know, that connects to the fine structure constant. It's just using it to authenticate itself, you know. So I'll take you through it as best I can, you know, because it's difficult to communicate this because you're talking about mathematics. People hate math. I did when I was at school. But when you actually get into it, it's something. Math is actually beautiful. You know, the way things come together with mathematics.
So you're listening now. Get your pens and papers ready.
Yeah. So the code, right? There's three. There's three sets of coordinates in the code. Two of them that give this explicitly, and the third kind of like non-direct. But these coordinates in the code, they point to a latitude, okay, that was passing through Giza in 1980, which was the year when the code appeared. You know, Jim Penniston received it on Boxing Day morning, by the way, 1980, and really I see it as the gift that keeps on giving. It's like a Christmas gift.
Yeah, it was a bit. Yeah.
On Boxing, even though it's Boxing Day and. It's the day after. Well, actually, the incident began on Christmas Day. It began on Christmas Day evening.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, in America, it still would have been Christmas, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Being like 6 to 8 hours behind. So, in actual fact, you still would have been in the middle of the day.
Yeah. So, as I said, it's like the gift that keeps on giving. Okay, and I'm still finding things with it now. You know, just the other day, I found something that I thought, well, that kind of goes along with what I've been saying. But anyway, so there's two sets of coordinates that give a direct line to this, pointing out this latitude running through Giza in 1980. And when I say in 1980, you have to take in consider the slow tectonic plate motion of the African plate on which Giza is situated, and it's been moving in a northeast direction, 51.46 azimuth degrees over the last 100 million years. So it's kind of consistent, and the rate of speed, the actual velocity is 2.15 centimeters a year. So you've got to take that into consideration when you're looking at the coordinates of specific kind of key points on the monuments. It's the land that is moving, and the coordinates have to change in accordance with the movement, you see. And the GPS coordinates are, what is it, WS84, since 1984. They update it every few years, or maybe even every year, to accommodate this movement of the plates of the Earth. So the African plate, as I said, on which Giza is situated, moves at a rate of 2.15 centimeters a year, and in a northeast direction of 51.46 azimuth. Now, I found all this out by using tectonic plate motion calculators. The best ones I could find anyway, the most reliable ones. So using the Glen Dash Foundation survey point maps of Giza, which give the GPS coordinates of each of the key points of the pyramids, the corners, each of the corners, and also the Sphinx in 2018. I'm able to take those coordinates, those specific coordinates that were found by Glen Dash, and I can project them back to 1980 using this Vincenzi distance calculator, which is another reliable calculator. And I think it's down to, you can find things down to like 0.5 millimeters. You know, it's that accurate. You know, between certain coordinates. If you was to measure the distance between certain coordinates, then, you know, the accuracy is down to like 0.5 millimeters. So I can project those coordinates back to 1980. So in 1980, there was this latitude passing through Giza, and this latitude, it divides the longitude distance, the north-south distance between the center of the Great Pyramid and the center of the third pyramid, G3. It divides that distance into the phi ratio proportions of 1 and 0.618. This is the latitude that was passing. The numbers in that latitude, of that latitude that divides this distance between those two pyramids into phi ratio 1 and 0.618. I mean, that in itself is a major discovery, that the pyramids were sited and constructed to the phi ratio. Right? But this also, I mean, that what I just told you is something I discovered by using the code. It points to that. So anyway, it points to this latitude, and the numbers in that latitude are 29.9766248. You know, I can memorize numbers. This is why I'm pretty good at math. I'm able to memorize numbers like phone numbers. And that's how I am with the constants as well, the universal constants like pi, phi, e, and the phi structure constant. I can memorize those numbers and calculate things and juggle the numbers around, and I'll come up with discoveries with these numbers. So anyway, that latitude, which, as I've said, divides the distance into the phi ratio, how the pyramids are sited and constructed. That latitude passing through 1980 is also 320 royal cubits from the base, the south base of G1, which is the Great Pyramid. So it's 320 royal cubits south of that south base of the Great Pyramid. And it's 70 royal cubits from the north base of G2, the second pyramid. So there's these numbers, 320 and 70, all right? Now, when you take the number of the latitude that was passing through Giza in 1980, and I call it the golden cut latitude because, as I said, it divides the distance into phi, the phi ratio, the golden cut. When you take the number 29.9766248 and you multiply by 320, and then you divide the result by 70, you get the reciprocal number of the fine structure constant that was determined in 2018. And it's a 12-digit number. You get the exact number to 12 digits, to 9 decimal places. That was later determined in 2018, which was 38 years later. So that's it's phenomenal. The number itself, and I will reel it out, it's 137.035.99908. And that's a number that comes up by just multiplying the numbers in that latitude by 320 and dividing by 70. And that's what comes up. So, and as I said, there's two sets of coordinates that point, actually 3 sets of coordinates that point to this latitude going through Giza in 1980. And you find out that this golden cut latitude is 320 royal cubits from the south base of G1 and 70 royal cubits from the north base of G2. And you use those numbers to calculate the numbers in the latitude, and you come up with a reciprocal number of the fine structure constant to 12 digits.
Well, I hope everyone followed that out there.
Now, unless people look, I mean, me saying that, what does it matter? You know, it's like people, they need to research this themselves. They need to look at this themselves. They need to check it all. In fact, that's one of the things I've done is I've laid it all out for people to check for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just read that number out again, Gary. That's 137.0399908, was it?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Just in case anyone missed that.
137.035.99908.
Oh, I missed a 5 out.
No, actually 084. 084. Sorry, 084.
Right.
And that's the number that was determined in December 2018, and then published in 2019. And the strange thing about this is that I'd already found this latitude, okay, this golden cut latitude, via the coordinates and the code. But you see, when I found this latitude and I was able to work this out, this was at the end of 2018, actually when they made the new determination, but I wasn't aware of the new determination. I was only aware of determination that had been made in 2014, because it's every 4 years that they make a new determination. So I was only aware of the 214 determination, and the last 3 digits of that number was 139. You know, 137.035999139. Okay. And so it didn't come to the number of decimal places that, you know, I thought it would. You know, I thought it only stopped at a certain number of decimal places because of it. And it was when I thought of looking at Wikipedia to see, you know, on the page, the fine structure constant, to see if the new determination had been made. And this was while I was writing the last chapter of the book, that I found that the new determination was made, and the last 3 digits was 084, which is what comes up in from the coordinates, from that the golden cut latitude coordinates. You know, it's what generates that number. And those last 3 digits, that's when I knew that this authenticated the code, and that, you know, the code was authentic.
Yeah, I think you actually do reference that at the end of the book, don't you? I know you...
Yeah, but for me to find this new determination at the very same time that I'm writing about it, and that's the reason why the book was delayed, because I needed to put that information, that new data, into the book to show that this is what the code predicted, you know.
Yeah, so, I remember when we was all eagerly waiting for it and kept on asking Jim, when's it coming out?
Yeah, and I delayed it because I needed to add that information to the last chapter. Now, you know, people ask, what is the fine structure constant? You know, they need to know what the fine structure constant is before they kind of look into all this. And basically, it's alpha. It's called alpha as well. And it shows up in the description of the fine structure of atomic spectra. Okay, it is referred to also as the coupling constant because it is also a measure of the strength of the electromagnetic force that governs our electrically charged elementary particles and light photons that interact. Right, it is also described as the ratio of the square of the charge on the electron divided by Planck's constant and the speed of light. Right now that's just going to go over people's heads. All right, but one could think of it, you know, in this simple way, like it's really the sum of certain fundamental constants of nature, and it allows life to exist on our planet. And you could think of it as the fingerprint or DNA of each wavelength of light. Okay. And I was going to say, it's also considered the most fundamental of all mathematical constants, in that it is a dimensionless pure number and not subject to our own Earth-based measuring systems. If the true number of the alpha constant, which we are still in the process of determining precisely, was altered ever so slightly, if you take one number away, we in our reality would not exist. Alpha, the fine structure constant, actually literally holds everything together. So I'm going to read out this quote. Okay, so this guy, Michael Brooks, he gives this quote. He says that change the fine structure constant number by a smidgen, and you can change the universe. Increase it too much and protons repel each other so strongly that small atomic nuclei can't hold together. Go a bit further and nuclear fusion factories within stars grind to a halt and can no longer produce carbon. The element on which life is based. Right? Make alpha much smaller and molecular bonds fall apart at lower temperatures, altering many processes essential to life. So that's why the fine structure constant is significant, it's important, and it's the reason why it would most likely be used in a message from advanced civilization. And as Carl Sagan says, and here's a quote from Carl Sagan from page 205 from his book, The Cosmic Connection, which was published in 1973. He says, there is only one category of legend that would be convincing, when information is contained in the legend that could not possibly have been generated by the civilization that created the legend. If, for example, a number transmitted from thousands of years ago as wholly turns out to be the nuclear fine structure constant, this would be a case worthy of some considerable attention. All right? And he says from a civilization that could not have created it, and that civilization, if we look at Giza, that would be the ancient Egyptian civilization, and that number of the reciprocal number of the fine structure constant comes up in the latitude that passed through Giza in 1980, dividing the distance between the pyramids into the phi ratio. So how about that?
Yeah, mind blowing. No, so that was that was in before the Rendlesham event as well.
There's a lot of things that come up later that the Rendlesham Code makes reference to, that comes up, past 1980, in the years, later than 1980. And I mean, look, the thing is, and this is something else that's really important to get across, is that I couldn't decipher the code until I found the most accurate and reliable survey maps of Giza. At the time when the codes surfaced in 1980, there was no reliable maps of Giza. There was no GPS coordinates that you could rely on. And all that data only become available in 2018, really.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It started to become available around about 2014. And also the coordinates, the whole GPS coordinate system. That didn't come into being until 1984. So these things all came to be after 1980, but you would need those tools, those online tools and programs to be able to decipher the code. So, and that's something that people don't realise. And they say, and there's a lot of people who say, well, why did Jim Penniston wait 30 years before he actually, made the code public? Why did he keep it to himself for 30 years? Well, perhaps it might be a subliminal thing with him that he was told not to release the code until 30 years later, when we had all these tools and programs to be able to decipher it.
Well, he actually said that he was actually thought he was going mad, didn't he? Writing down all these ones and zeros over what was it? Was it 15 or 16 pages in the notebook?
Yeah, 16 pages of
ones and zeros. I mean, you would think if you're going to sit down and do ones and zeros, you would think you're crazy, wouldn't you? For no particular reason.
Yeah, Jim says that he didn't know what binary code was. A lot of people kind of picked up on that and said, they must have known what binary code was even back in 1980. But he says he didn't. And because he was writing down his ones and zeros, you know, he must have thought, crikey, this is like, I must be insane writing these down. What is this all about?
I mean, I think it's easy nowadays to say, well, we all know what binary codes are, but we've got to remember he was in his 20s back in 1980. He was about 26, wasn't he? 27, something like that.
Yeah.
As a sergeant. And there's no reason why he would know what binary codes meant even back then.
Well, even if you did know what binary was, you're writing down a string of binary code that you don't know where it's coming from, but you're just writing it down. And you know that is enough to make you think you're going insane.
Well, especially over 16 pages, and it's actually coming out with the results that you're coming out with now. I would think that would just be impossible to actually forecast that, you know.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is that a lot of people picked up on that too. Oh, you know, how could you do that? How could you write down these numbers in the right sequence? You know, just like that, just write them down. And really, as we discussed this before offline, you know, I'm a guitarist, so when I play a guitar solo, I don't even think about what I'm playing. It will just emerge. You know, after playing the first few notes, it will just run in sequence perfectly. Now, if I was to think about each note I was playing, I'd mess it up.
Yeah.
But it's like a pattern that's already been kind of, you know, I don't know, burned into the mind, and that you only have to you only have to play the first two notes or the first note or whatever, and it just starts to flow. And it's like if you was walking down steps, if you thought about every step you took, you'd probably fall down them. It's an autonomous thing. It's like driving a car, you know, when you reach for the gear stick and you just do it automatically. You don't think about it. It's a robotic thing. And it's just a pattern that's been put into your mind, you know, that you've learned, but you've learned it over and over and over again. It becomes a pattern that you can just generate whenever you want to do it. So I'm thinking that it's the same kind of principle with the code, you know, with the binary ones and zeros were kind of injected into his mind. And it was a pattern, as if he'd learned them. He was able to just write them out. In fact, as I said, Jim can still do it. He can still write out those ones and zeros in sequence.
And he still doesn't know what he's writing.
No, he doesn't know what he's writing, and he said to me, you only have to, and well, what I said to him was, you only have to probably write down the first couple of binary figures and ones and zeros, and it just flows from there. Yeah. Basically, that's what it is. It's a pattern.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got to tackle the point that some people have suggested that you two got together to write this book, and that the whole thing was conjured up. But, you know, I mean, I don't think that for 1 minute, but, you know, I think you ought to try and put that to bed, Gary. I mean, I think in my mind you have put it to bed already. But there were suggestions, because you mentioned about he had a partner that came to live with him some time back, and she seems to have gone out of her way to try and destroy Jim's narrative.
Yeah. I can see why. Because she was in a relationship with him. Yeah, and Jim ended the relationship. So there would be a lot of bitterness involved, I guess. But no, there's no way that me and Jim got together to, you know, devise all this and, you know, make out something that, you know, to fool the public. I'm not into doing that. I go out of my way to make sure that everything I put out is factual data. You know, and I will speculate about things, but I will tell them that I'm speculating right now, and you know, I don't want to hoodwink the public. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I did that. You know, you've got to be honest. And I actually thought it was Jim that may have devised the code at first when I first found it.
Oh right, yeah.
But I realised that no, it couldn't. You know, he couldn't have done it. And anyway, a lot of the things I've been finding when I communicate it to Jim, he'll just say, yeah, okay. And I know that he's not taken the time to read it properly or actually try to understand it properly. You know, it's just over his head. And he's not lived and breathed this stuff like I have over the years. And in fact, I think that the experience I had back in 93 and the research I did into that experience and what I was discovering later on was all in preparation for me working on the code later. You know, and that's why the code fell into my lap, I think, because it's the way I approach certain things. It's my approach to it that maybe is the key to unlocking all this information from the code. So it's the way I personally approach it. You see.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm an INTJ, you know, which is one of the Jung's psychoanalytical kind of what do you say? It was like a certain state of mind, a certain mode of perception, and personality type, and that's what I am, an INTJ, and I know that because I had a test on that.
Right.
And I see things a lot differently from a lot of other people. It frustrates me, actually.
Yeah. I mean, at the time when Jim got in touch with you, did you actually know anything about the RFI, as we call it, the Rendlesham Forest 1980 UFO incident?
Yeah, because I actually first read the paper, you know, the News of the World when it first came out on that Sunday. I remember my dad. I was living with my parents at the time, and my dad got the News of the World, and he said, "Look at that on the front page." And he kind of scoffed at it, and I read it, and I thought, well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
and
I mean, of course, that was the Art Wallace story, who later turned out to be Larry Warren, and of course, that was all alien based, wasn't it?
Yeah, I followed the incident over the years, and and I didn't know Jim Penniston, but the funny thing is, before Jim Penniston got in touch with me, I saw a documentary about Rendlesham, and he was being acted by this guy, you know, and he was the scene was with him underground or in some facility where he's being given the sodium pentothal. And I thought to myself, that would be an interesting guy to talk to, you know, maybe what he knows and that. And a couple of weeks later, he gets in touch with me by emails out of the blue.
Wow.
You know? And he wanted me to look at the coordinates on the code. And what it is because in the past, with the books I've had out, you know, I'm kind of known as someone who looks into codes and kind of deciphers ancient symbology and that kind of thing. I'm seen as maybe the go-to guy to, I don't know, decipher certain things or look at certain images or symbols to try and decipher or interpret the right information from it. So, yeah, that's why he got in touch with me.
I mean, also, you've got to sort of notice that that partner who was trying to poo-poo his story, basically, was the one that actually put you two together in the first place. So, you know, so it doesn't follow on that you got together, you know, as he suggested, to fool everybody, does it? You know.
No, Jim just wouldn't have the patience to do anything like that. And as I said, all this is purely from the code. Everything I've found is purely from those coordinates found in the code, which are from 1980. Jim did have the pages tested, and the guy who was kind of expert at testing these pages, the ink and the paper, did say that it's in round about 1980. But he needs a proper test done, you know, with the technology we have today. That still needs to be done. But I'm now convinced, having known Jim now all this time, I'm convinced that what he's saying is true, you know, that he wrote down those coordinates at the time he said he did, and he got them the way he said he did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know one of the people that says they never saw any of those notes. It was Colonel Charles Hall.
Because Jim said that he used to take the pages out of the book before he showed anyone the book because he didn't want them to see it. Didn't want them to see the ones and zeros because he was embarrassed by it.
Yeah, because of questions to ask that he couldn't answer.
Yeah, the book was a ring binder, and he could actually remove the pages, and sometimes he put them at the back of the book, you know. So that would explain that. And then people say the notebook was something that came up many years later, you know, that Jim introduced the notebook years later. But there's the account by the guy he was showing the notebook to on the bus, you know, returning from the incident, going back to the base. You know, where Jim showed him the sketch he did of the craft.
Of the craft, yeah.
From the same notebook. And that notebook Jim had actually taken to a conference, which was just 18 days after he after he retired in '93, and he took that notebook along then. And it was the first time he could come out and speak the truth about what had happened. Because before that time, and you still get these skeptics saying, "Oh, Jim's changed his story." Well, no, he actually changed the story to the truth after he was told to tell lies about it. You know, to give the fabricated version that the OSI had given him on a small piece of paper. Well, on a piece of paper which only had half of the account that Jim had written out initially.
Yeah, it'd all been watered down, hadn't it? Yeah. In fact, it looks like they'd actually tried to make the 2 or the 3 incidents, whichever way you look at it, into one, really, didn't they? They tried to make it all look like it was one incident.
Yeah, that he never got more than 40 meters, you know, in front to the craft, and that was untrue. You know, that's what they wanted him to put out, and he had to abide by what they told him, or he'd lose his job.
Yeah,
be kicked out. And so it was after he retired that he thought, you know, well, I'm just going to go ahead and tell the truth now. That's what he did.
Well, I mean, there's something that falls over with that as well, because the next day Jim went out to take some plaster casts of the actual landing gear.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, I mean, even with Colonel Holt,
it was actually that same day.
Yeah,
it was actually that same day. It was that, you know, after, because
that morning. That's right. Yeah.
In the early hours of the morning, and then Jim went out later in the day to actually before lunchtime. He actually got it done. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't go to bed, and
that's right. I remember him saying, yeah.
And he needed some evidence, and that's why he went out and took plaster casts of the landing gear. But he actually said that the landing gear wasn't anything that was, you know, mechanical or, you know, metal or anything like that. He said it was beams of light. He said it was actually standing on beams of light. It was actually resting on beams of light. And these beams of light he could see were making indentations into the ground. Did you know about that?
Yeah, I did. No, I did. I wasn't actually sure. I've heard 2 different stories about the landing gear that nobody was really sure what it was, but I have heard that it was a beam of light. Yeah.
It's like it was resting on laser beams of light.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that Colonel Holt also mentions that nothing was reported about a craft having landed in the forest on the first night, really.
Yeah.
But the fact is that Colonel Holt knows about the fact that Jim went in to take plaster casts, because he actually had a plaster cast from him to show people. That's so right, yeah. It's kind of that sort of don't really tie up, does it? You know, because you either believes that something landed, otherwise why would he be showing the plaster cast?
Yeah, you see, I went through all this, and I know all about it because I've done all the research on it, and for the first book. And I say it's the first book because these other 2 follow-up books coming, but that's the reason why it was called, you know, book 1 timeline. What Jim wanted to do, because I just wanted to get a book out about the findings of the code, but Jim said to me, look, what I need to do first is just get a book out that I've always wanted to do, which just shows my account of what happens and the aftermath. He said it's important that I give the aftermath of what happens to show people's attitudes and what they were doing and what they were believing and what they were trying to do after the incident. He said, and my experience of it all. He said, I need to do that. And I said, actually, that would be a good idea because you need to lay a foundation for what comes next with the findings of the code. So then I did all this research, and it took nearly 5 years to write that book. And I said it's like 700 pages.
Yeah.
And a lot of my research, what I did, went into the end notes of the book. And the end notes are extensive. It's like 2 books in one. It's like you get one book which is like Jim's account, and the second book which is like all what happened around him, things that he wasn't even aware of that were happening, based on what I found in witness accounts and what other, you know, watching videos on it, listening to radio interviews, all that, and I went for what I consider to be more or less the whole jumble, you know, of what there is out there.
It actually took me about a year to read it.
Yeah, but also what Jim described to me. I mean, I wrote his account as well. I wrote out his accounts, but based on what he was telling me and what he was feeling and what he was thinking at the time, and I was able to kind of I don't know, articulate it better, so I could give his account. What I wanted to do and what he wanted to do most especially is give an account for the reader, so the reader felt that they were there with him.
Yeah, that's right. And it does, minute by minute, doesn't it? Foot by foot.
Yeah.
I mean, what I mentioned about Colonel Holt, I mean, I've got the greatest respect for Colonel Holt. I mean, he's actually a friend of mine. He's come to stay at our place and everything. But I've got to point out the fact that when you got Monroe Neville's, he's got quite a lot in the book as well, and he says a lot of things that disagree with a lot of what Colonel Holt says.
Yeah.
And my last show actually at the end of 2021, when I sort of packed it in, but then I sort of come back sort of 6 months later. That was the last show, and he came over very believable. And the fact that what he was saying seemed to really match up with a lot of what Jim was saying, and you know, it does leave a lot of holes there that. I mean, I don't think we'll ever get the full story now. To be honest, I know we've got a pretty good story in the Rendlesham, you know, Jim's book and your book.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But I mean, there's always going to be questions out there from people, and is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I mean, when I was researching it, I was kind of flustered, you know, with the contradictions in interviews, different interviews that one, you know, like one of the witnesses had done. And he contradicted himself, you know, many times just by looking at just all the different interviews. You know, I got that with Colonel Holt especially. And I could only deliver what the truth is, you know, and based on the interviews I heard and what I saw in certain documentaries, what he mentioned, and there were contradictions he made, you know, it didn't seem to fit. He'd say one thing and then would say another thing, you know, based on the same detail of the incident. And, you know, I'm kind of frustrated by that. But I thought, I can't hide it. I've got to deliver, you know, what is actually out there. Now, the thing is, he didn't like it. And then he started to kind of, I don't know, attack me in the media.
I know, yeah. That's why I thought I'd better bring this up, because I know you've been attacked in the media and everything.
And he even tried to get at me through my wife, you know. But I remember when he was on the show with you, I had to laugh because he mentioned that Heather, my wife, was Jim's wife, you know, Jim Penniston's wife.
Oh, right.
And
I must have missed that bit.
He said, was it? I don't know. He spelt our name wrong.
Right.
Well, he said, what was it now? It was It wasn't Osborn. It was something else. He got the name wrong. And I thought, well, you know, maybe he's going senile or something in his old age.
Yeah.
But, you know, he wasn't getting those facts right. And what he had said, was claiming my wife had said just wasn't true. You know, it's nothing that she would have said, you know, online or anything. I mean,
well, I don't see why she would get involved in it, Heather, anyway. Why would she get involved, you know?
She wouldn't, and she wouldn't have said such childish things, and it was really childish, you know, saying that once this book is out, you know, the other witnesses are going to be destroyed. I mean, if Heather had said that online, I would have reacted against it, you know. But she isn't the sort of person to say that kind of thing. And it must have been said by somebody else. It wasn't said by me. It wasn't said by Jim, and it wasn't said by Heather. So he got it wrong. He's just misread something, and yeah. So that's my. I
wonder if I said it. No, that's what I'm joking.
You know,
no, I mean, there's a lot of people. Charlie, as you see, there's so many people out there that probably would say something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't out to attack Colonel Wall. I was just telling the truth.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it all boils down to. I like Chuck. I mean, he's a good old boy, I should say. But there are several holes, and I actually think in the early days he was actually trying to cover up for his men that was working under him. you know. And I think some of the stories got a little bit twisted, and he's probably dug himself into a little bit of a hole at times, and not known how to get out of it in the later years. And also, you get false memories as well, don't you? I mean, I've had them myself. And
all that was evident. All that was evident was what I was finding during the research, and I couldn't just suppress it. I couldn't just or ignore it. It's something that I thought, well, if this is going to be the definitive book that Jim wanted, then I've got to show, you know, everything that's out there, even if some of it contradicts something, you know, else that they've said. And you know, it's got to be out there, and the reader makes up his or her own mind, you know, about it.
Well, I've got to say, I mean, after reading the book myself, I didn't really see anything absolutely derogatory in it about Colonel Holt, you know.
No, I wouldn't have done anything.
There's nothing really offensive in there. It's just like pointing out different things that you've said this here, but it sort of was that there, and you know, the same as what has been said about John Burroughs. Like he said one thing,
Jim,
you know,
Jim was kind of angry that once he and John had kind of gone their separate ways, that John started attacking him. And there are a lot of things that throughout the time they've known each other, and since the incident, and even during the incident, that Jim had witnessed certain things with John that he didn't agree with, and which made him think, you know, this guy, you know, he can't be depended on, and he knew these things, but he never actually said any of that in public. But once John started attacking him, he thought, that's it, I'm going to tell the truth now, and I'm going to use it in the book. I'm going to tell the truth in the book, exactly what I saw, what I observed, what I thought, what I felt, you know, when he was with me, you know. So, and then you get people saying that, oh, Jim was just out to attack John, you know, in the book. He just wanted to, you know, put him down in the book.
Yeah, what you seem to find is people fall into different camps, don't they? You get the Larry Warren camp, you get the John Burroughs camp, and you get the Jim Penniston camp. You know, did you not find that? Whereas I've tried to keep my foot in all the camps over the years, you know, to try and get at the actual truth, you know. Yeah,
I know. You get people following certain witnesses, and you know, well, that's up to them. You know, it's up to them. It's they follow them like they're fans, you know, like they're pop fans, and or rock fans, and it's just, you know, who's the most coolest, you know. Oh, Larry Warren is, let's follow him. John.
Not anymore, I don't think.
John's got a swagger to him. He looks cool. You know, you know what I mean? Let's follow him. But you know, the only person that I found is giving an account is anywhere near the truth is Jim Penniston.
Yeah.
And that's not because I know him. Just looking through everything that I was researching.
Well, that's based on evidence, like you're saying.
I could see where the discrepancies lay, and when I brought it up with Jim, he was able to explain it, you know, perfectly. The things that he didn't explain properly and that he was kind of confused about, I thought, well, that's just a human failing, you know, that we all have. It's all to do with memory, really. But
yeah. I'll tell you, there's another name that cropped up a few years back, because he came over here, and he was stating that he was out in the woods with Larry Warren, and that's Steve Longero. Yeah. Now, I think the evidence points out that Steve Longero was actually confined to the weapons storage area on that night, so there's no way he could have been out in the woods. I mean, do you know anything more about that?
No, only what I've put in the book there. I did mention Steve Longero, because I had to kind of put as much in there as I could about all the witnesses and the people who claimed that. No, you could see that some of these people were writing themselves into the story.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
And I would say that, you know, I found that with Steve Longero's account. You know, he would disagree, of course. But, you know, when you look at it, when you're an outsider looking in, and you can see the patterns, and that's why I had to dismiss Larry Warren's accounts, because he contradicted himself so many times. And you could see that they were just basically outright lies. Yeah. You know, like a pathological liar.
Yeah. I mean, that's been proven. I mean, as I say, he wasn't even in the Air Force for or just over 9 months, was
He
it?
can't blame,
less than 10 months.
He can't. Yeah, he can't blame people for noticing it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And that's what I get with some of the chaos demons in the world. You know, who will do something bad and then blame you for knowing about it.
Yeah,
you know,
right,
or finding out about it, or they project their crap onto you. You know.
Yeah.
So I didn't set out to actually put Larry Warren down. It's just that's, you know, I had to put out what the truth was from what I found in my research, and that was it.
Yeah, well.
So, is there anything else we need to go through? I mean, there is actually a lot.
I know there's a lot. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the 2 books you're working on, or is that a secret? We can't tell anyone.
No, I've been putting stuff out on the on Facebook. I mean, Facebook, you know, it's funny. It's not really the medium to kind of you know, promote certain things or show.
Well, you didn't tell the truth on there. You get locked off straight away.
Yeah, I still think that people will just press like and not really read what I've written, and they'll just press like and you know. That's okay. Look, I put it out there for the record, sort of. People who are interested in reading it, fine.
Yeah, well,
it's really for the people who are interested.
See, the important thing is, Gary, on the Paranormal Dimensions page that I've got on Facebook, I'll actually put a lot of your text on the page as well. So anyone's listening to this can actually come to see what you said on it. So, but I can also put links to your page as well, so they can sort of follow you. If people out there would like to follow Gary and see what else he's coming up with.
Right, good. Yeah.
But as I say, I know you're working on another couple of books, and I believe they're the same size as this Veneration Enigma, which is about almost 700 pages, isn't it?
Yeah, there's enough, as I keep saying to people who are kind of down on the code, the skeptics, and I said there's enough data to fill 3 large volumes. There is. And it's just all come out of those 7 sets of coordinates. And remember me saying to you that this is kind of a strange thing about all this data that's encapsulated in those 7 sets of coordinates. Now, if I get these books out, they're going to be in the public domain. All that information is going to be in the public domain. And maybe in the future, when they actually find they can manipulate time and space, and that, you know, they've got the secret of time travel, that they think, oh yeah, you know, all that information that just come from one of those 7 sets of coordinates, let's send those sets of coordinates back. You know? So it's like a loop. It's like a time loop. And where does it end? Where does it begin and where does it end?
That's what I said. I thought I was going to let you say that, because it could be you that started all this in the first place.
Yeah, it's like I'm caught up in some sort of time loop. You know, I don't know.
It's like the Twilight Zone.
It's a strange thing.
Yeah.
I mean, John Burroughs has recently gone on Jimmy Church show.
Oh, I know. Church show.
And Jimmy Church kind of threw me a few curveballs, you know, with some of the questions he asked. And he didn't get it. He just didn't get what I was telling him about the initial information from the code, you know, the angles between the coordinates and that. It's like it just rolled off his back. And anyway, John Burroughs is on his radio show only recently, and John is saying that I think it's from the future, this phenomenon is from the future, saying almost like Jim has been saying all this.
I nearly choked on my coffee when I heard that.
And he said that I think it's like myself in the future communicating with myself in the past. Really, you know, because that's what the code, it's what I kind of get from the code, is that it seems to be either from the future. If we look at it in that way, you know, in an objective way, but also it could be from a domain or place that's just outside our time, you know, our space-time continuum, you know, I don't know, but it's information that's come from somewhere else and it don't seem to be related to our timeline. It's a huge temporal anomaly with this code. You know, it's coming up with things that was not known back in 1980 when Jim received when he claims he received the code. It's like when there's certain things I will find that have a relationship with what's happening now in the world, you know, and what's in the media that will come out of the code. You know, so I mean that in itself You know, it just shows it's just an anomaly, a time anomaly, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. It's probably confused quite a few people that are listening to this as well. You might need to listen to it a couple of times.
And the thing is, I don't think I'm ever really going to get to the end of it because, as I said, I'm still finding things, and I think I'm going to have to pass the baton on to somebody else to pick up where I left off, because really I've concentrated on Giza. There's enough information about Giza, and I mean, there's new discoveries about Giza that's come from the code. You know, things that we didn't know about. And that, you know, there is just enough to keep me busy all these years, you know. So the other sites, the other locations, the other coordinate sites, they all need to be looked at as closely as I have with the Giza coordinates, you know, from the code. So it's an ongoing thing. It lives and breathes, you know. It's still ongoing. It's not something that you can get to the end of quickly. And so it can still be going on, you know, after I pass away, it can still be going on with someone else learning things from it.
I know at times it's got, I think you've said it's got too much for you. It's almost going to give it all out, weren't you, at some point?
Well, no, that comes from most of the people's stupidity. When I try to communicate some of this stuff, it's like I get stupid comments back. They don't really ask the right questions, and I get frustrated with that. You know? But there is something in the code, and it's like, really, I wish other people could do this themselves. And if they found what I have, then it would convince them. It would, you know, that's why I've written it out, so that people can follow what I've done and find out for themselves. There's nothing better than people finding out themselves. You know?
Absolutely.
Its own. So that's one of the things, I know. And with Facebook, there's so many, you know, every day I look at it, there's something stupid being said.
Oh, yeah, it's always,
It's not the right medium. I have got people who have PhDs following what I'm doing, and they you know, they endorse it. I mean, there's Professor de Vierville, who happens to be the cousin of the late Neil Armstrong.
Oh, right, yeah.
I mean, he's been following it, and I talk to him regularly, you know, about the code, and he thinks it's something that's really big that everybody needs to be aware of. And but you know, people are kind of looking in the wrong direction for what they think is going to be something that will prove the phenomenon. And really, you know, that 12-digit number that's been predicted by the code, that's something that is relevant, you know, in terms of that, you know.
Yeah. I think you've also got a faction of people out there that don't want to hear that it's not aliens. You know, if the whole thing comes out, that they want it to be aliens. You know, there's several people that are sort of convinced that it must have been aliens, but it's not necessarily the case. You know.
No.
I mean, I believe in aliens. I believe they're visited here. But, you know, seeing what I've seen and hearing what I've heard from you, I think it's quite a good possibility that, it could well be something interdimensional, you know. If you want to call that alien, then fine. You know.
Yeah, no, that's the way I see it. And I think it's got a lot to do with our own consciousness as well. I'm thinking that this phenomenon is kind of stealing in and out of our reality through a blind spot in our consciousness, because a lot of the time these accounts say that the phenomenon, or what they witnessed or what they experienced, seemed real and unreal at the same time. So it's like this fusion of opposites, this fusion of this kind of duality that goes on, and it's just like fusion of the two. You know, like real and unreal. It's something that's real and unreal at the same time. And it seems to me that people, when they have these experiences, they're in an altered state of consciousness, which is akin to what I call the hypnagogic state, which is where you're awake and asleep at the same time, or neither. You know, it's like a third state of consciousness.
I'm like that constantly.
And you know, it's like you enter the hypnagogic state at the point where you're falling asleep. If you kind of sustain your consciousness, if you sustain your attention at the point where you fall asleep, then you might be able to move into this other reality where you're then having lucid dreams that seem real. And it's like you've entered another world. And it's the shamanic trance state as well. It's how they were able to move into these other realities.
Yeah.
And it's the hypnagogic state. It's where you're awake and asleep at the same time. So it's a fusion of opposites. And I think that's true with this phenomenon. And Carl Jung knew about that. Carl Jung understood this. He called it the third force, or the third thing, the tertium quid, he called it, which is Latin for the third thing. You know, so it's a kind of third reality. It's neither something that is conscious, objective, and neither is it something that's subjective or subconscious. It's something other, and it's a third thing. And I think that is the secret behind the phenomenon that a lot of people are experiencing. And even Colin Wilson, the writer, he said that the hypnagogic state is the open sesame to the paranormal and mystical. And I knew Colin Wilson. I went down to see him in Cornwall, and we kept in touch. And a lot of my work actually stems from my conversations with Colin Wilson as well. So
yeah, very interesting man. I've got a few of his books on my shelf here.
Yeah.
But,
he became a friend, and sorry about that noise in the background.
No, it's all right. It's only traffic. Don't worry about it.
No, it's not the traffic. It's the air conditioning.
Oh, is it? I can't actually hear it. So I shouldn't worry about it. I've had worse. I've had dogs barking and babies crying and all sorts of stuff. So I shouldn't worry about it. Anyway, Gary, I've got a big question for you.
Yeah.
Is there any chance you might be coming over to the UK at any time?
Yeah, we talked about that, haven't we?
Yeah.
I want to. I need to. I mean, my mother lives over there.
And also Jim. I know Jim's quite eager to come over as well.
I mean, yeah, because I've been living in Wisconsin since September. I've been living in Pennsylvania for a good 5 years, on and off kind of thing. I used to go back to UK.
Actually, yeah, we should have mentioned that, because you've got your British accent. You actually live in the States. Well, we should have mentioned that at the beginning, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I've been living here solidly for the last 5 years. 6 years, I was kind of coming back and forth between, here in the UK. And married Heather over here. And been living over here since, I don't know, was it 2015? Or, well, it's more than that. No, 2016, sorry. 2015, I was kind of moving back and forth. And then I started living here from 2016. Yeah, so, I when your question, I'd love to go back to the UK. The whole thing with the virus and that stops us from travelling, doesn't it? And I was going to go back at some point during that, but the virus kind of stopped all that, and I never got a chance. So yeah,
we won't go into the virus.
No, I do need to visit my mother.
No, of course I know. But I know Jim's quite eager to come over as well, and I think I did actually try to suggest that maybe we could fix something up with. I know even Monroe Neville's wants to come over as well, so we could fix up something where the whole three of you come over. I think the trouble is,
it'd be an ideal.
I think the whole thing is the problem is he's financing all three. It's all right to come up with
difficult now.
With an air ticket for sort of one person from the States, but to come up with like 3 air tickets is.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I mean it's ideal, and it would be an ideal thing, but practicality, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, let's just put it on the back burner.
It's simmering there. Yeah.
I mean, I would like to put it that way. My intention is to get back to the UK at some point, in the near future.
And of course, you'll have to get in touch with me, and maybe we can fix up some sort of a conference or something. And
I mean, I have turned down.
Well, unless you want to go somewhere else,
in the past. Yeah, I have turned down conferences in the past.
I know you have.
That's one thing about me. I kind of work against myself. I have a lot of data that I want to share with people. Especially with this thing with the code, but I don't actually put myself out to promote myself, it's really about the the information. It's not about me, but I don't really put myself out there I'm not like a lot of those other UFO kind of entertainers. I don't want to be part of that kind of circle, and be seen as such. In fact, I kind of shy away from a lot of public exposure.
No, I do know that firsthand.
So getting me to a conference it can be a big deal. But I my intention is at some point to actually put this on the road, you know.
Yeah,
and
it'd be
get
fantastic.
this stuff out.
Well, especially with the other 2 books coming out as well. You know, perhaps that's the time to start thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, Gary, it's been fantastic. Now, before you go, if anyone's not read the book by Jim Penniston, Rendlesham Enigma, Book 1, Timeline. It's not just Jim Penniston, obviously. It's Gary Osborn as well. It's almost 700 pages. I'm thinking something. Jim said it was 702 pages. Now, I think that's probably the Kindle version he's talking about, was it? Do you think?
It may be a Kindle version.
I know the paging comes up a bit different, doesn't it?
No, I think it goes by the page count of what kind of format it's in.
Yeah.
I mean, it is if you look at the manuscript itself, it does come to 700 and odd pages.
Right.
Probably more than the 702, but you know, it's condensed down when you format it. And,
I imagine it's because the notes are all in smaller print, aren't they? So maybe as you condense it down, it ends up with less pages. Yeah.
Some people have complained about the print being too small, but you can't. You know, you just can't please everybody.
No, but it needs to be distinguished between the main part of the writing, doesn't it? I can see why. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if the end notes were put in the same, a larger font, it did run to probably 1,000 pages.
And it would probably get confused with the rest of it, because at least you can instantly identify what's what, can't you?
Yeah, people have been also asking for an audiobook version, but it's kind of the practicality of that, because how do you have someone narrate Jim's account and actually then go to the end notes, which are kind of inserted in the account?
Yeah, you'd have to do each note with every highlight, where it mentions it, wouldn't you? I think that would be the only way you could do it.
So that would be problematic, you know, in a practical sense. So I don't know how that would be. I don't know how that would become a reality. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's something for the future.
I'd love to see an audio book of that. In fact, that's how I kind of absorb all the books that I get now is through audio. My eyes are shot, you know, from all the years of meticulous, like, I don't know, detailing in the graphics I produce and all that, and writing all the time, and my eyes are shut. And so the last thing I want to do is read a book. But I want to absorb the information of the book, so I get the audio version.
Well, I mean, the nice thing is you can walk around, make a cup of coffee, make a sandwich and all that, can't you, while you're listening? You know, which is not something you can do when you're reading a book.
Exactly. So that's why I turn to that. Have we covered everything?
I think we have. Yeah, I mean, unless you could think of something else you'd like to say. I mean,
there are a lot of things with this code that I'd love to mention and I'd love to share.
I'll tell you what, Gary. When you bring your other 2 books out, maybe come back on again.
Yeah.
And we'll go through all the figures again.
Yeah, you see, one thing with this code is that one thing you find will lead to another thing, and then that will lead to something else and another thing. And really, when you look at it all as a whole, if you look at it holistically, it all matches up. It's like a grid. It kind of all grids together. And what I mean is it's correlative information. One thing will confirm something, and that other thing will confirm something else in the code, and it goes full circle.
Yeah.
So this is how the code is, and it's like there's no way Jim could have done that. He couldn't have encapsulated all that in just 7 coordinates. You know?
Yeah. It'd be great to get you and Jim on the same show, actually. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, we did it. We did it one time, but it was kind of difficult. I don't know, but really, all people want to do is talk to Jim. They want him to go over his same account all the time, and they want him to give his account a touch in the craft. And it goes over and over. They go over and over and over again in each of these radio podcasts, and they just ask for Jim. They're not actually talking about the code. If they bring the code up, Jim isn't sufficiently brought up to speed on the information that the code has generated to be able to put it across properly.
Yeah.
So really, it does need me to talk about it, but they don't get in touch with me. They get in touch with Jim.
That's terrible.
It's like Jim was the only one who wrote the book. You know, I'm not bothered by that. You know, because Jim asked for the book to be written, and I did that for him. And he's like happy as Larry Warren.
Well, hopefully he'll have a listen to this, so we'll get an idea of him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a kid in a sandpit with it. You know, it's what I wanted to do, and I mean, he did ask other people to write with him.
Yeah.
I mean, he did ask Linda Moulton-Howe, or Linda Moulton-Howe tried to do that for him, but they kind of fell out.
Yeah, I know.
So really, you know, I'm happy. I'm really happy that he's happy with the book, you know, because that's what the intention was, to get his account out, how he wanted it.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I think that's quite important, because I do understand there was a little bit of disappointment with the book he did with John Burroughs and Nick Pope, where a lot of his account was actually left out of it, apparently.
Yeah, sure. But there, you know, as I said, there's a lot of because I've written a book with Jim. I've got his account across. I could relate all the things that he's related. You know, I've lived and breathed it with him the last 11 years. So I can talk about the code and I can talk about the incident as if I was there, actually. You know,
as long as you're not having these same nightmares.
Yeah, yeah, it does turn up in my dreams. Yeah, I mean, of course, the code, the information from the code, that keeps. You know, it's a strange thing. Yeah. I keep getting numbers. I told this to Robert Bovell. You know, Robert Bovell asked me to contribute an appendix to his book called Cosmic Womb, which he wrote with Chandra Wickramasinghe, who's a PhD. He's a cosmologist, and he studied under Fred Hoyle, the astronomer. And he asked me to contribute this appendix to his book because of the things I'd found about the Great Pyramid, the mathematical properties that have been encapsulated in the Great Pyramid. And he thought he was really kind of impressed by some of the things that I'd found. So he asked me to contribute this appendix. But what he didn't know is that a lot of the things that I'd found was actually from the code. It was actually, you know, it was the code that was responsible for me to finding a lot of this stuff. And he didn't know about that. You know, it's something that he should have known, maybe, but I didn't mention it because it was something that I needed to prove properly, you know. And this was before I found the reference to the fine structure constant. I don't think Robert Bovell would have been open to it, you know, because it's from a UFO incident, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, Gary.
Yeah, and as I said, what I was going to say is.
Sorry, go on.
You can edit that bit out.
No, that's all right.
What I was going to go on to say, because when I brought up Robert Bovell, the reason why I brought him up was because at the time when he asked me for the contribution, I was having dreams about all this mathematics. You know, it was like appearing in front of my eyes. And I'm sure that in a subliminal way, it was going into my mind what I would be finding, what I would discover later on. It was already as if it was just telling me about certain connections that I wasn't picking up consciously, but were going into my subconscious that I would find later on. You know, and Robert Bovell, when I told him that, he said yes. He says I think that's how the Great Pyramid was built. He said how the inception and the conception of it came about and why it was built, because certain people were able to, like shamans, for instance, were able to gather information from inside that allowed them to be able to conceptualize this thing that they built.
Wow.
You know? So that was just something else.
That is very deep. Yeah.
I'd say. Yeah.
It's I'm very honoured to have you on. Thank you for taking the time to come on and speak to us and go through all those figures. And I'm sure there's going to be a bit of confusion and probably raise a few more questions in people's minds. But I think you've covered things very well, and I just hope everyone's enjoyed listening to it. I'm sure they have. If anyone wants to get in touch with me or Gary, please do. And if you've got any questions you want answered, perhaps we can, or Gary will try and answer them for you.
I always do that. I always address people's questions, and I do that on Facebook as well. If you look at the thread and all the posts in the thread, I always answer people's.
You do, and very very detailed as well. I know, I've seen them. Yeah. But anyway, like I said, I will put some links on the Paranormal Dimensions page for everything, and we shall eagerly await the next 2 volumes.
Thank you very much. It's been great talking to you.
And you go. You take care of yourself. Say hello to Heather for me. Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
There we are. I hope you enjoyed that. That was Gary Osborn, and very informative. I hope you got some understanding out of that, out of the work that's gone into what Gary's been doing over the years. It's obviously been very painstaking for him. Okay, right. Well, we shall leave it there. If you, as always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, my email address is davidyoung2qn@yahoo.co.uk. That's davidyoung2qn@yahoo.co.uk. If you have got any questions, forward them on to me and I'll forward them on to Gary and we'll see if we can answer them on the show for you. But until the next time, we'll just play out with Jim Penniston mentioning about his book and where you can get it, etc. I hope you'll join me again next time. My next guest will be Eleanor Wagner, who's also a paranormal radio presenter on this same network. Until then, bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Jim Penniston. I am here to tell you about a groundbreaking new book about the Rendlesham Forest incident of 1980. It's called The Rendlesham Enigma. This book, 85% of it, is previously unknown to the public and to other witnesses. After 39 years of disinformation and misinformation coming out about the incident itself, I decided to team up with Gary Osborn and write the definitive book. I thought I was more than qualified since I was the first responder of the USAF, United States Air Force, deployment off base on a craft of unknown origin. What I would like everybody to do to know is that this book is definitive. It's 702 pages long. Of that 702 pages, 300 pages are endnotes. What it does is presents the facts like never been presented before. Everything I kept close to the vest all these years is in this book. I will put you right beside me on contact night. You will go through the emotional distress that I went through. But at the end of the day, after reading this book, you will have a complete understanding of what actually happened at Rendlesham Forest that night. So please, go to Amazon.com, buy either the paperback or the Kindle. I guarantee you this much, you will not be disappointed.
Unidentified flying objects, commonly known as flying saucers, do exist. Some kind of flying objects have been photographed in the sky. If they cannot be identified as objects known to man, what are they? If they are not man-made, who made them? If they are not from this planet, where are they from?
Paranormal Dimensions is fortnightly on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.
Hello, my name is Jim Peniston. I am here to tell you about a groundbreaking new book about the Rendlesham Forest incident of 1980. It's called The Rendlesham Enigma. This book, 85% of it, is previously unknown to the public and to other witnesses. After 39 years of disinformation and misinformation coming out about the incident itself, I decided to team up with Gary Osborn and write the definitive book. I thought I was more than qualified since I was the first responder of the USAF, United States Air Force, deployment off base on a craft of unknown origin. What I would like everybody to do to know is that this book is definitive. It's 702 pages long. Of that 702 pages, 300 pages are endnotes. What it does is presents the facts like never been presented before. Everything I kept close to the vest all these years is in this book. I will put you right beside me on contact night. You will go through the emotional distress that I went through. But at the end of the day, after reading this book, you will have a complete understanding of what actually happened at Rendlesham Forest that night. So please, go to Amazon.com, buy either the paperback or the Kindle. I guarantee you this much, you will not be disappointed.